But we just want to thank everyone for joining. Before we do start, I'll just open this up in a quick word of prayer and we'll begin the night. Lord, we thank you as a church that we can still be together during this time. And as it's a different time for all of us in lockdown, as we're learning how to live amid this pandemic and this crisis. And as we're about to just share our own thoughts and planning for the future, just be with us as a church. And more than anything, allow us to be faithful to you, to the community of the Bay Area around us, and allow us to be good witnesses and disciples in this area as your church. So be with us tonight, be with us in the future. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. So yeah, thanks guys for joining. To give a quick, intro of what we're doing here. We know there's a lot of questions just about the future, and we haven't had a good outlet to kind of share that. I mean, we can do emails and social media posts, but we wanted to consolidate everything into just one place where we can just directly talk very frankly and honestly and a little more raw about what our thoughts are for the future. I know for most of you that are working, your workplaces should have already informed you about their own work from home planning and their phases for the future. And for tonight, we wanted to share our own plan. And as everyone here will share, it's a rough plan and we hope that it can come true. But again, this pandemic has taught us one thing is nothing is predictable. Just to give a quick intro, myself and Pastor Jay are members of the pastoral staff. Matt Chung and Mike Pegg are on the strategy team for our leadership board. We've been meeting in the past couple of weeks just to strategize for the future. So we're hoping to share our plans. Just quick housekeeping items. Q&A is open during the whole time. If you have any questions at any time, please feel free to type it. It's completely anonymous. And at the end, we'll try and answer as many questions as possible. And right after this call ends, we'll also have a survey pop up. If you could fill that out for us, that would be extremely helpful for our leadership. So we hope you can do that. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Jay.
All right. Well, hey, guys. I hope that you guys are having a good day so far. I know one of the things that we've all been wondering about is when can we gather again? And I think, number one, the other members will be kind of explaining this, but we'll be following the phases. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of give you guys a word of encouragement and an exhortation for us to really think about what it means for us to be Christians and followers of Jesus Christ at this time. So one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to read a passage for us where in Acts chapter 8, verse 4 says this: "Now those who were scattered went about preaching the word. Peter went down to the city of Samaria and proclaimed to them the Christ. And the crowds with one accord paid attention to what was being said by Philip when they heard him and saw the signs that he did." This is in the book of Acts, directly following the martyr of Stephen. And one of the things that we see in the book of Acts is as the disciples were gathering and as more and more people were coming to know Christ, you saw these large amounts of people accepting Christ, right? Like 3,000, 5,000 people coming together. And what happens in chapter 8 after the martyr of Stephen is that the church is scattered. They're sent out. And you would think that in human terms, that the scattering of a very young movement would kill the movement. But what happened was that the dispersion of all the followers of Jesus Christ at this time throughout the Roman Empire was actually beneficial for the gospel of Jesus Christ to move throughout. And the reason why I bring this up is because, number one, if you've grown up in the church, or even just if you became a believer recently, or if you've just started coming out to church in general, one of the things that's a reality for us was that our faith and the culture of Christianity was very building centric, or it was very Sunday centric. That the highlight of our faith for many of us was the ability to come together as one large community or large gathering on a Sunday to worship God and to sing songs and to hear the word of God preached. And the reality is that we didn't know anything else other than going to church on Sunday to a physical location where we participated in worship alongside the community of other believers. But what we know to be true as throughout Scripture is, Jesus mentions that when we worship, we don't worship on this mountain or that mountain. We worship in spirit and in truth because God is spirit. So this idea of trying to get away and really deconstruct what Sunday worship is, that it's not based on a location or a building, is for us to be able to really see the sovereignty of God and his purpose for why this might be happening. Or even during this pandemic, how can we really see or use this opportunity for the advancement of the gospel of Jesus Christ? So just as in the book of Acts, the scattering of the disciples was used to benefit really the spreading of the gospel of Jesus Christ, I really believe that one of the great opportunities that we have going forward is that even though we may not be able to gather together physically in person, at a physical location where we all come together as one body, what we have the opportunity to is now to be messengers and advocates and really people who are representing Christ in the places that we are. And I think, right now that's all going to be done virtually. But as we continue on through the different plans and different stages and phases of kind of, this pandemic, I think it gives us an opportunity to really rethink what does it mean for us to be a light in our community and not just a holy huddle where we gather together on Sundays. So with that, what I wanted to do was kind of a big picture wise, what are the things that need to be in place? What are the things that we need to see in order for us to consider gathering together in a large group setting? So one of the things that, or three things that I want to highlight is this. Number one, the quality of our Sunday gathering experience has to be good. And what I mean by that is this. Currently, at this time, if even we were to meet because of the social distancing measures, because of the restrictions that are going to be placed, and not only that, but also because of the way that many people might feel, the quality of our gathering and our worship, I don't think will be that good. And I say this not because, I'm so smart and I know all the answers, but this has been the general consensus of a lot of the Christian leaders and churches that are thinking about, well, when is the right time for us to meet together? There was a church in the Midwest that did start their Sunday gatherings a week ago. And the feedback that they gave was that, even though we met, the majority of the people didn't come. The fact that people were sitting so far away from each other, the fact that there was no real community aspect of being able to share life together, it really felt, made the worship feel less than what it could be. So for us, I don't think it will be worth it for us to gather until we are able to have the type of quality worship that I think we are used to having. So one of the indicators of that is when the social distance measures and the shelter-in-place measures are opened, when people are feeling more confident and comfortable to go to sporting events, concerts, movie theaters, I think it will be at that time where our quality of worship will be good enough for us to want to gather together in a large setting. The second is children. Children are almost unable to social distance. And I'm going to confess right now that my family got invited to this shaved ice at a park thing that was done, kind of set by one of the moms at our school. And everyone was supposed to social distance and, stay like 6 feet apart and stuff like that. But the moment the kids got excited and they got sugar in them, they were just playing around. They were playing tag. They were like chasing each other without, despite all the warnings from us to stay away from each other, it was just impossible. So meaning if that's the case, either parents will not bring their kids to church, or when they do come to church, there will be no social distancing, and it might affect, people getting sick. The third thing is singing and music. Our ability to be able to sing out loud and worship together is part of why we gather. And when you sing in close proximity with people, the reality is that a lot of germs get spread. So until we feel comfortable that we can actually sing together and sing our praises to God without having the fear of of thinking that we are going to infect one another or get infected, I don't think that until then are we going to feel comfortable to actually gather. So those are the three things that we're looking at. Those are the three things that we're seeing as markers. And those are the three things that we hope would be relieved for us to be able to gather together. So just a reminder is the quality of our worship, our children, and our ability to sing and to enjoy live music together.
Great. Thanks, Jay. So given that, what we are trying to do in light of that is try and phase our way into church. And to speak a little bit more about that, Mike Pegg, who's part of our leadership board and part of our strategy team on the board, will share a little bit about the idea of phases.
Yeah. Hi. My name's Mike, and I'm just really happy to be joining together with Pastor Jay and Pastor Eugene, together with Matt. Just thinking through this. There's been a lot of material that Jay and Eugene have shared with us, with just how other churches have gone through this, and just been a really eye-opening, kind of fascinating experience to try and think through this. If you can go through to the next slide, just kind of bring up some of the phases. Before we talk about each of these four, just want to reemphasize that this is just more of a game plan than a hard and fast blueprint that that the church is trying to put together with input from us, and also taking in feedback and questions from folks tonight and beyond. So definitely a game plan, and like every sort of passing week with this, the game plans change, and as you get more information, you refine the game plan. So just want to reemphasize that this isn't a blueprint that is set now and would be the plan that we carry through all the way. Talking with Pastor Jay and Pastor Eugene about this, they've said that it's very likely that we'll not all meet together, like Pastor Jay was saying in the stage 4 section here. At least today, that's looking like something like 6 to 12 months at the very earliest. Who knows? Maybe something changes and that becomes sooner. But realistically, right now, it's looking like 6 to 12 months. I think I don't profess to be an expert on these stages, nor really can anyone be. I think even the state government that puts this out, the California state government, is it's a very fluid stage by stage definition as they get more information. But this is kind of what we're trying to connect to, based on what the state of California is trying to advise entities like churches and businesses and things like that. If anyone's working for a large company, you've likely started to go through and understand what some of these stages are and what that means for your work day. This is the same thing that we're trying to follow with regards to the different phases. So yeah, I'm not expecting to, sorry, my kids just came in with my voice playing out of their phones, so it's a little distracting. They've joined on another device, so I'm hearing myself talk, sorry. We're going to follow these 4 phases of reopening. I think the thing that I want to emphasize too is just the biggest priority is protecting our community and our neighbors, and families and True North members. That's the priority, and those who are at risk, those are most risk, likely would not be able to meet unless this topic of a vaccine being available at a certain point. So let's not focus too much on the vaccine part of it. Like the stages are what we're trying to follow, and so just to set these up, this is what we're trying to plug into. I'll pass to Matt, who's going to try to sort of go through each of these phases and how we're plugging in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 to the sort of workings of the church. So I'll pass it over to Matt.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Can everybody hear me okay? Mike, your audio was a little bit, I guess, there was a little bit of feedback. As you mentioned, I think that's probably because of the other device. But everyone else, or Eugene, can you hear me fine?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, am I coming through okay? All right. So hi, everyone. My name is Matt. As Eugene and everybody else kind of mentioned, I'm part of the leadership board that kind of work with the pastors, Pastor Jay and Pastor Eugene, to kind of help, come up with the strategy. So as kind of Mike kind of talked about the different phases and kind of our phased approach and where that comes from. That previous slide, again, in case you missed it, is kind of what the state of California put out there, right? In terms of how they kind of see us going from where we are today all the way until the lockdown is lifted, right? So what we did was we basically kind of took that model of different phases and try to come up with kind of our church's phase model of how we want to kind of approach this or strategize this going forward, right? So phase number one, as you can see there, is kind of the current stage, right? So again, we've already I think on week 9 of the lockdown, and again, there's a lot of things that we've done already to kind of go online with our worship. There's certain things that we've already tried just to make sure that everyone is staying connected virtually, whether it's through Zoom, different Bible studies, and this and that. So there's a lot of things that we've done so far, and that's kind of what we're considering to be phase 1, the current stage. Phase 2, which we've already kind of started to do. The leadership team and the pastoral staff have already kind of started planning for this. So phase 2 is what we would kind of focus on, kind of improving what we have today, right? So improving, again, the virtual worship that we have, whether it's available through Zoom. There is a survey that we sent out yesterday that has some questions around just getting some feedback from you guys in terms of the different platforms, if you prefer one over the other. So there's some improvements that we're trying to introduce there to see how we can overall kind of improve that experience. Another one is we're looking to kind of hire a team of video production experts so that they can kind of help us improve the quality of the Sunday worship and some of the different content that we are producing and providing through our website and through our social media channels. Another one, so that's kind of covered under centralized recording there. So in terms of this phase right now, although again I kind of opened it up by saying, hey, we're technically in phase 1, but right now, again, we're already starting to plan for this. So it's kind of slowly moving into this phase. And then, of course, as we get into the other phases, I'll kind of talk about it. One thing here that I want to kind of point out here is, I know probably a lot of you or some of you probably joined this thinking that, hey, is there going to be some sort of a timeline in terms of, what it's going to look like for us to kind of, open up the church. But as Jake pointed out at the very beginning there, we definitely want to make sure that this is, done obviously properly and of course safely for everybody who's involved. So again, as you will see from the different phases that we're talking about, there's really no time component here because again, just the situation that we're in where we can't really predict anything. Everything we predict today, everything can change tomorrow, right? So as again, Mike also pointed out there too, this is more of a game plan. So there won't be any kind of concept of timeline in terms of phases. But this phase approach will kind of give us, again, a plan on, what we need to do one after the other. So through the Sync series, which we're planning to have more on an ongoing basis, or through just the different announcements that we send out, you guys will definitely be, alerted in terms of when we're moving from one phase to another. And as we plan for kind of the next phase, of course, we're gonna, come up with some next action items. And then as we continue to meet as a group, we'll kind of come up with those. So you guys will definitely be notified there. Let's move on to phase 3. The phase 3 is where we kind of start thinking a little bit about, actually meeting in person, right? So I think the best way we kind of, again, compare this with, for example, California's, phases is, as a lot of you guys know, some of the essential businesses and some of the other businesses started opening. So it's kind of similar to that concept where, hey, when we talk about our church and actually meeting in person, like what does that look like? And the first thing I think that comes to our mind, of course, is our comm groups. As all of you know, our comm groups are sized somewhere between, for example, like 8 to 12 people. So I think it's a good kind of measurement or good setup already to kind of see if we can, start kind of easing into that. One key part there, of course, is the very first word there in parentheses, voluntary, right? So again, we want to be mindful of everybody who's involved in this, and we want to make sure everybody is comfortable. So even if we starting with this phase 3, we want to make sure that everybody's comfortable, and therefore everything will be voluntary, right? So if you don't feel comfortable meeting in person, regardless of size, then feel free to refrain from that and wait until that lockdown is completely lifted, right? So that's the way I think phase 3 will happen, where, hey, if we feel like some of this guidance from the state and the government is starting to feel like, okay, you guys can meet in small groups or even bigger groups, then that's when we will kind of slowly move into phase 3 and carefully plan on how we can set up some meetings there. Obviously, for people who are not part of Calm Group, we'll come up with some sort of a system to make sure that you are we can either put you as part of other different small groups. So we'll definitely plan for that when we get there. But right now, that's kind of the plan. Okay. The phase 4 is the last phase. Again, this is kind of the last phase, if you will, where this is by this time we're talking about the lockdown pretty much being lifted, right? Where we can just all meet back as a church, and everything is kind of going back to quote unquote what we consider to be normal, right? But again, when we get to this phase, we're definitely gonna have to kind of revisit the 3 markers that Jay had laid out for us: quality, children, and then of course being able to freely worship next to each other. So again, in terms of going back to this idea of timing, we don't know when that's going to be, but when we get there, we'll make sure that there's definitely social distancing protocols in place if it's necessary. But at this point, we feel like a lot of that should be lifted so that we can comfortably come and meet as a group. So that's kind of phase 4 at this point. Okay.
Thanks, Matt. So that kind of concludes our presentation portion of the night. So what we wanted to do is open up to Q&A as much as possible. So if you guys look on the chat portion of your Zoom, there will be a area where you can answer any or ask any questions. It's completely anonymous. You have the choice to do that. So please feel free to ask some. We have some rolling in, but I guess some open questions to our board and team right now. Maybe one question that Jay can kind of speak a little bit more specifically to, but Matt and Mike, feel free to chime in at any time. What are other churches that we know or that we're friends with? What are they doing in terms of planning? Are they meeting soon? Have you heard of anything specifically, Jay, on your end? You're on mute, Jay, by the way.
The churches that I do know are currently in a similar situation that we are in, meaning that they're in the planning stages, trying to figure out as they follow the California guidelines and course of action. With none that I know are actually meeting or thinking about gathering. I have read of some churches that are trying to meet, but though I do know of some of those churches, I don't have a personal relationship with them.
Okay. Your audio is going in and out, just FYI, Jay. Yeah, on my end, I think a lot of the friends I have in ministry or church, it's a wide variety and spectrum, but most of my friends in my network are trying to do what we do, be really wise about opening. I think the main kind of idea is, for the majority of our churches, even within our church, I don't think we're at risk, but we really want to consider those outside of us, because if we do meet and we do get infected and we're fine, we can easily spread to those that are at risk. So due to that, we want to be extremely careful and cautious with, I guess, reopening. So that's that. Another question was, and maybe Matt, you can answer this because specifically to your sharing. It looks like in phase 2, we mentioned quote unquote centralized recording. Can you explain maybe what that means a little bit more for us?
Yeah, so when we talk about centralized recording, as you guys probably already noticed from some of the sermons that we put up, it's recorded just kind of individually. So everyone kind of staying at home is coming together and providing just kind of, their part of the video. And then what we're doing is we're having a team basically bring that together. Centralized recording, we're basically referring to, again, as I mentioned earlier, if we were to say hire, a small team of individuals who can kind of help us with video production, we're kind of exploring ideas on, hey, maybe we can somehow kind of centralize all of that in terms of whether it's a location. But of course, we would be taking, all the precautions necessary to do so. But it's more just around kind of seeing if we can kind of improve the quality of just the overall video. So we call it centralized recording, but that can look very different depending on, what we actually end up doing. But it's really for the purpose of trying to see how we can, provide better quality content. through our online channels. Yep.
Great. Yeah, I think maybe a follow-up question too to that, and Mike or Matt or Jay, feel free to answer this one, is given that why the need to spend on Sunday service production? Could we use the funds elsewhere to maybe directly impact our community in need?
Yeah, is this better, by the way, if I just speak
Way
this way?
better, way better.
Yay! All right, everyone can hear me. Yeah, actually, so Jay, I think when we were first about this,
It was better, but now. Mike? All right, it looks like Mike is frozen, but I'll try my best to answer that. One, I think that's a valid point or question for us. We're trying our best to think of the community as well. If you didn't know, we raised our COVID-19 relief fund. Up to now, we have up to 16,000 raised from our church, and our church is matching up to 25,000. So we're doing our best to match that and help our community in that way. But given the Sunday service production, we're not thinking like smokes and mirrors and multiple video cameras. I do think at this point, I'm the only one editing. So I have some experience, but I'm not at all a professional or can be at that level. What we're thinking is just spending the minimal amount needed to provide Sunday service that can impact our community and also disciple our church. And one of the aspects that we are trying to think of is our vision. We're trying to still be missional as possible during this time. I think now more than ever, the gospel needs to be proclaimed because people are in desperate need of that. So given that, we want to make a video production of quality enough where if a newcomer is on streaming or just looking through their Facebook on a Sunday morning, they would click that and hopefully hear the gospel. And we're going to try and be transparent as possible with our budget at the end of the year too, to ensure that we're not overspending and our members can kind of keep us in check. So there's that. Does anyone else want to add to that?
hey, Eugene, I'm back. It sounds like you were answering what I was trying to tee up. So
I was trying to read your mind.
Yeah. Overall, yeah, it worked. Overall quality, that whole thing.
Yeah. Great. I had another question that came in was, what are ways, I guess this is more to Matt and Mike too, what are ways you would recommend our church to still stay connected even though we're separated virtually? I think a lot of people are kind of fatigued from being on a screen too. So maybe experiences on your own or thoughts that you guys might have.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I mean, we were even talking about it a little bit before we joined, right? Like that we're all seeming to wear different hats and be different people sitting in front of the same screen in the same chair these days. And so, yeah, I'd have to think a little bit more about that, Matt. Is there anything that comes to mind right away for you?
Yeah, I think for me, probably the thing that comes to me almost right away is just being part of comm group. So right now I'm leading a comm group out in the East Bay area. And one of the things that we started, and if you're part of comm group, you're probably aware of this too, is kind of like one-on-one pairing. So one of our members in our comm group basically every week would pair us up on one-on-one within the members of the comm group. And then basically the idea is that, hey, during that week, if you guys can just reach out to that person that you're paired with and then just talk to them about, how their day is going, how they're doing. And I think the nice thing about that is, again, although, this idea of comm group, of course, is to kind of maintain that community. And I get that, sometimes we're able to do that in a smaller group setting, which of course is helpful. But as you guys both mentioned, with the whole COVID-19 situation right now, it's kind of hard to do that. Or, I understand that, yeah, in a group setting, sometimes maybe you don't want to share as much. You're just kind of tired of Zoom. But if you're doing it more at a one-on-one level, whether it's over the phone or even just, through text messages, I feel like the feel is a little bit different. And it kind of, when you talk about just being connected, I think that's one of the best ways to do so. So obviously, if you're a part of comm group, that's something you can try. If you're not, I'm sure you could still know some people out there in our church or even just outside of our church, group to see how you guys can do so. But again, if you're interested in, connecting with anyone in church, but you're not part of a comm group, feel free to either let any one of us know, or if you know someone there, I would highly encourage you to just kind of reach out to anyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I think on that point too, there's, I mean, definitely there's a certain element of, being on a lot of video calls, either um, symmetrical or asymmetrical, where you're either like listening into something or actively engaging with it. It's interesting when you're talking about just reaching out to people. I know there's a few smaller group chats of just a few of the kind of um, sort of married age brothers from within the church. I know that we've kind of um, established a bit of a connection. I think to your point, Matt, I just don't assume that some people are connected. If I think something just to keep in mind on a lot of that too is if someone from the church, or anyone for that matter, kind of pops into your mind, like, don't assume that they're connected to people. Like, it's sort of like saying hello to people on the street right now. Don't assume that they don't want you to say hi, because that small thing might just be like kind of a highlight of their day. So just, if you're thinking about somebody from the church, like, kind of reach out to them one-to-one and maybe establish a little bit more of that kind of connection, because as connected as we can feel on video, sometimes it in a larger group, sometimes it can feel kind of impersonal and that you're not really truly connecting with people. So yeah, I think you just, to your point, Eugene, like, we just have to be really creative about the ways that we do that. And it's, it can be at a bigger level like this. Like, there's 54 people listening to me blabber on right now. And, like, one-to-one is really, really still the most important thing. So.
Yeah, uh, I totally agree with everything that Mike and Matt are saying. One of the things I read today was there was an anthropologist by the name of Margaret Mead, and a student asked her, what is the first sign of civilization? And she thought about it for a while, and she said, the first sign of civilization is a broken femur, a healed broken femur. And her explanation is that back in those days, if you broke your femur, you're basically dead. It takes 6 weeks to heal, meaning that you can't hunt, you can't gather, you can't do any work. Somebody or a group of people to take care of you. And when you see a healed femur, that and the compassion that follows along with that is the sign of civilization. And I think right now, what's very important is for us as a community and as a church to really seek out those that might have broken femurs right now. And I'm sure that you guys have all experienced this, where one day you feel like, hey, I can do this shelter in place for months, and then like an hour later or a day later, you're like going out of your mind and you're thinking, I can't handle this anymore. And the only way that we can get through this that are feeling good and healthy are able to identify and reach out to those that are struggling. And I think every single one of us, we're kind of on that cycle, and where we show the compassion to really help one another out through the tough times. And I think that is probably the best way that we can foster community, build community, and help each other out.
Yeah, I think that's all good. I think a follow-up question that was asked is, are there plans to maybe put together a few documents on how to be more intentional and effective in discipling through video, guidance talks on tips for other aspects of church life? I think that's a great idea. I think that's something me and Jay can totally work on and try and get out as soon as possible. So great idea. One other question, more church specific, and I think Jay, you might be able more scope to answer this. How are we doing financially? How's our giving? Are we in any dire need to raise more funds, or is our church doing okay?
Number one, we had a board meeting, I think about 2 weeks ago or a week ago, and our finances are doing okay. Sorry, I'm getting distracted because I hear myself echoing, but I'll try to fight through that. And number two, because of the fact that we're not having to pay rent at Gunn High School, that lowers our costs. So financially, we are okay. We were also able to apply for the PPP, right? Is it PPP or PPE? Small business loan.
It's PPE.
PPE.
No, actually,
PPE.
I have no idea. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm getting
PPP.
confused with all the SIPs and PPP and PPE. Anyways, we were able to apply for the second round of the small business loan, which we were able to receive a small loan for us for our salary and other type of funds that we can be using it for. So that was the long answer. Short answer, we're doing well. And the fact that we've even raised $16,000 for our COVID relief fund is also a great blessing.
Great. Couple just more questions, and then we'll try and end around the 45-minute mark. Is I guess for the church member, are there ways that we can serve the church at this time? I think the question trying to get at is like people usually that are serving, maybe they're not a community group leader, maybe they're serving physically on a Sunday. That's not possible right now. So maybe just ideas from our board and our pastors. What are ways you feel like we can serve the church virtually during this time?
Matt, do you have any ideas? I'm just thinking through like, some of the various ministries and just the way that um, some of those ministries are still active. I think the thing that I think about the most, if you're involved in any sort of community group, I think there's always ways to look at ways to improve that meeting. I know just meeting together with some of the other community group leads and within that ministry within True North, like I think every member, even though not a lead, sort of can look for ways to improve that. Because when you look at the ways that you're experiencing True North today, it is through there's several events and different ways to kind of fellowship and meet with one another and prayer and different things throughout the week. But I just think immediately to sort of community groups and just ways to help out with either some of the things that interns are doing, just looking at new ways to sort of bring more people out who might not be as regular, kind of reaching out, volunteering to reach out to people that maybe we haven't seen in a few weeks to make sure they're doing okay. So I think just really kind of digging into community groups is one thing that comes to mind. I don't know if anyone else has any other ideas.
Yeah, so just to take it from there or to add to that, yeah, I agree. I think in terms of our church, as Jay just kind of answered that question about the financial aspect of it, I think we're doing okay. I think because we're not meeting in person and, we don't have to worry about that building and the setup and a lot of that, again, I know a lot of people, we don't need that help today. I think if we need the help from a church perspective, I think we've been pretty open about that through our different channels, asking for help, sending out surveys, and of course you can participate that way. But I think one of probably the best way, and I've actually seen this happen with some people within the church or even outside the church too, is just, going back to kind of our answer to the question earlier about how we can stay connected, which is just be intentionally kind of, checking up on people. I think if you've been either coming out to our church or, regardless of how long you've been coming out, I think you always kind of know some people that either may need help in this situation or that you may have heard about, right? So if you want to just be a little bit more intentional about just checking in on them, some of the things that I've seen are, just sending people meals through kind of, as you guys know, the Grubhubs, the Postmates, all of that. If you know someone is having a hard time because they're either working or taking care of kids or anything else, right? So I think that's definitely a good way to do so. And I think, again, not just for our church members, but even outside of our church too, right? Just in your community, of course, family, just being a little bit more intentional and just checking up on people, I think is a really good way to kind of help out at this point. And of course, again, coming back to the church aspect of it, I think if we need help, we'll definitely let you know. And so stay tuned for that as well. And then, if we send out surveys or if we, put out any calls for help on any like Bible studies or anything like that, keep your eye out for that as well.
Yeah, I think that's good. One specific thing that we just got messaged, our youth ministry and education ministry is actually looking for people to help. But if you do want to, it'd be for a long time. It's not just hey, let me serve for one Sunday. So if you're interested in that, that's a great area of need currently. And like Matt mentioned, we do have a survey. And I think one great way to service is just like, we want to know how you're doing because it's hard to gauge that. So at the end of this call, when it does end, a link will pop up. So if you do have time, it'll take less than 2 minutes. Please feel free to fill out that survey.
Hey, Eugene, I was gonna, there's one Q&A question that came in that I just wanted to share a quick story on. It was, have we had newcomers that have joined during quarantine?
Sure.
And if so, how they've been getting plugged in? Patty and I went out to Indo to pick up some takeout food. We ate a fancy dinner once a couple weeks back, and I saw Dr. Kwan, who's our dentist. Maybe half the people on this call probably have him as a dentist too. And I was just saying hi to him, and he mentioned how he was starting to check out the youth service that Pastor Charleston does, and how his kids have actually been starting to check out True North by way of that service. And I just thought it was really cool. I shared it with people on the board and leadership, and it was interesting to see that the quality of the children's service has actually started to draw in kids that are kind of looking for a good service to tune into. And maybe some of those churches don't have a good engaging youth service that Pastor Charleston is absolutely delivering every Sunday. We sit down and watch it with our kids. It's a lot of fun. So that's definitely one way that I've seen. I don't know, Jay, if you've heard of other newcomers that have joined, kind of tuning into other parts of it.
Yeah, I think online people, we are seeing different hits from different parts of both the Bay Area and the United States. So we are definitely getting a lot more people engaged in our Sunday worships. The part that probably Eugene will have a better answer for is how are we plugging them in, and I think that's something that he can answer.
Yeah, that's a good question. We've actually had quite a handful of people check us out even during lockdown and just virtually. We have a newcomer sign-up form that we're trying to rely on to see who's new. So we've had a couple people go through that. What we're trying to do is send an email out, seeing who they are and what brought them here, and trying our best to connect them to a community group as quick as possible, because right now that's the best way to stay connected. And we actually had a good handful, I think around 5 or even more, join several community groups in our church. So that's been a huge blessing. If you know of anyone, particularly people that don't believe, I think this is a great time to invite them to our service. So please feel free to do that. There is a system in place for our welcoming still that is still serving. So they'll be hopefully taken care of. So please feel free to do that. One last question that's probably geared a little more specifically to myself and Pastor Jay. Similarly to the financial help that True North is providing, is there a way to seek help from the church in terms of spiritual, mental, or emotional help during this time, other than the resources from community groups and reaching out spontaneously to our fellow brothers and sisters? I have some thoughts, but Jay, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, our pastoral staff, we are available to meet, to chat, to Zoom at any time that people reach out to us. I think one great opportunity and one great way is to be able to join in some of the avenues that we already have in place. So, whether it's Monday night Bible studies or Tuesday prayer meetings, even Sunday morning prayer meetings before the worship. And one of the things that I try to do when I do the prayer meetings and Bible studies is I try to stay online. And I let people know that I'm going to stay online for a little bit afterwards in case anyone has questions or prayer topics or anything like that. So I think other than that, I'll let Eugene take it from there.
Yeah, again, like Jay said, we're trying to do as much as we can. I think one thing I would caution is we're trying to balance boundaries. And if you don't know, Pastor Jay has a meeting literally every night. So we're trying to balance that as much as possible. But at the same time, a thought that we had was having a forum for anyone that is in need of spiritual counsel or emotional counsel. So we'll try to have that up as soon as possible too. And it will be not just Pastor Jay, but a rotation of leaders and pastors. So hopefully that can be done soon. That will be done soon. So thank you for that question. So given that, that's most of the questions answered. We're going to try and end this night, but just a quick reminder, if you do have any questions still and you feel maybe a little hesitant to ask here, at the survey at the end of this call, there's a section at the end where you can ask any question. The survey is completely anonymous, so please feel free to do that. So thank you for tuning in. I know there was a lot of technical difficulties. We're trying to manage church virtually. It's been a difficult task, but thank you for bearing with us. And maybe to close, Jay, could you close us out in prayer?
Yeah, let's pray, guys. And guys, thank you guys for your time. I know that we all probably have Zoom fatigue, but we know that you guys are here because you care about the church and you love Jesus and want to serve him. So thank you guys. And I also want to give a shout out to our panelists. These are men, husbands, fathers who are also giving up so much of their time to try to help lead and guide our church. So let me close for us in word of prayer. Let's pray.